The counter is stainless and clean enough to throw back our faces. A green diode ticks time in neat blinks. 40 minutes. Hands, the lab tech says, and we all show them. Latex snaps. He slides the chain of custody form across the metal. Pen, waiting like a witness. I print my name. The timestamp auto-stutters beside it. The mother signs with a steadiness that doesn't reach her eyes. The billionaire father collar open. Voice low, signs last. A compressor thrums in the next room. The vial sits in its foam cradle, sealed in tamper tape with a small red serial that likes to catch light. Above us, the state server's dashboard runs on a mounted monitor. Status. Q. The line that reads 40 minutes, scheduled auto-upload. Before we start the countdown officially, the father says, I'd like to put a practical option on the table. Our foundation funds a new lab build-out here equipment, staff training, compliance audits. We begin tomorrow. We do not rush today. 40 minutes isn't a rush. I say, it's protocol. It's also a trap, he answers, almost to himself. The mother turns her head. A trap for whom? No, for the truth, he says. For due process. For everyone who lives here, if numbers leak without context. I cannot mark it. The tech clears his throat. Context will arrive with the data. He says, please remember we're under observation. He points to the ceiling fisheye. The pen returns to its cradle. The humming grows a notch louder, or the room goes quieter around it. The mother's thumb strokes the corner of the custody form. My daughter's name doesn't belong on another form, she says, almost flat. It belonged on a birthday cake. Boo. No one answers. The monitor rolls to 38:28. I check the seals again. Photograph. Serial logged. The tech reads each step. A ritual against later doubt. Sample ID linked to server token. Witnesses present? Not. He holds up the timer. Puck redundant hardware paired to the state system. Once I arm this, if anyone kills power here, the cloud clock still runs. Bliss. So you can't pull the plug? I ask. You can always pull a plug, he says. You just can't erase that you did. The father watches the numbers march. I'm not asking for erasure, he says. I'm asking for 40 more hours. We can pre-register a remediation plan. So when the upload hits, there's something to announce besides outrage. The mother's gaze stays on the vial. A small bubble clings to glass near the meniscus and catches the LED like a star. My girl didn't get 40 more hours, she says. We follow the clock. Then we proceed, the tech says. He fingerprints the seal area with a dry pad. No smudges. Logs the custody handoff. My recorder clicks. I narrate time. Names. The presence of parties. Professional distance has a taste today. Antiseptic and copper. As the tech flips the form, a pre-printed line shows auto-upload to State Environmental Server Revision 3.2, confirmation the data bypasses local discretion. The camera above the bench is not just recording. Its feed mirrors on a side tablet with a read-only audit trail marked External Access Enabled Public Hearing Room A. People are already watching, I say. We made that choice, the tech replies. Transparency is part of the consent to test. And K. The father rubs a knuckle. And what if the sample is compromised? AU. We drew it under supervision. I say, chain of custody is clean. Chain of custody can be clean and still misleading. Do you want a number that burns your town without a plan to cool it? I fund the plan. I'll sign it today. The mother breathes out through her nose. Then sign something else, she says. Sign that we won't be quiet if the number is bad. Hey, arm the timer, I tell the tech. He thumbs the puck. A brisk chirp answers. On the monitor, 3959 slides to 3958. The room tightens around a single idea. Time is a shape you can hear. We settle into the waiting. The mother's hand finds the counter's edge. She won't lean, but she anchors. The father steps back exactly one tile, shoes aligned with grout, like he trusts lines more than people. I open my notebook, not to write everything's recorded, but to stop my fingers from tapping. Anything to disclose before we proceed? The tech asks. Ritual question. The father, only that my company no longer owns the site at issue. There's Nide. The mother, only that my child is buried 3 miles from your site. Ma. Then we proceed. The text says again, softer. And the clock keeps talking. The hallway outside the prep room smells like lemon and something sharper. Posters about hand hygiene stare past us. Through the glass, the green numbers keep their march, reflected in the mother's pupils as she holds a thin folder tight to her ribs. 5 minutes, I ask. I have 39, she says, then corrects without looking. 38. They're different. We stand by the vending machine that hums like a small storm. She opens the folder, careful with the creased edges. I signed this a year ago, she says. They called it a settlement. It paid bills. I couldn't look in the eye. Verisi. The first page is Lawyer Gray. Black bars hiding specifics. The visible clause is neat, like a trench cut through rock. She can speak about her life, but not about cause. Not beyond the facts. The document blesses. It's a repair trench, she says, almost to herself. They cut it just wide enough to crawl, not wide enough to stand. And sheet. What does it demand of you? No. 12 monthly drafts, she answers. Each one arrives if I keep my mouth inside the trench. Break terms before the last deposit and they can claw the money back and force me to say why. This. She doesn't blink while she says it. A cart rattles down the corridor, then steadies. She presses the folder flat against her chest. Would you still have signed? Her medicine cost more than my pride, she says. I would bargain with time itself if it put breath in her throat. Guess, I flip to the permission sentence her lawyer tuned for rooms like the one we're about to enter and read it aloud. Smaller than grief. I am not making claims about the cause of my daughter's illness. I am speaking to the conditions we lived with, the expenses we faced, and the outcomes we endured. The words keep their shape on the page and lose a little of it in air. He keeps saying he'll build a lab, she says. He's good at building things on top of other things. No. You think it's a distraction? Book? I think it can be both, she says. Help in hiding. People like me live where both are true. Nice. A maintenance man passes, dragging the smell of floor wax. The countdown blinks. 37-something. She slides a photocopy into my hand. You'll read every line, she says. I will. As you. And you'll put my words next to the numbers, not under them. That is no. I will. And so. She rubs the crease where the folder always wants to split. They told me I'd be done with court, she says. They didn't say anything about counting seconds while my mouth belongs to a paragraph. No. The board will ask for context. I say, they'll ask you to stay inside that trench. No. I'll bring a ladder, she says, then shakes her head. No. I'll bring you. And The prep room door bumps as a tray goes through. The lab tech's voice carries names, times, clean forms, the language of procedure that keeps rooms from drifting. I need you to stand beside the form when I speak, she says. Not to hold me back, to hold me up. Jolie, I'll be there. Is it so? Good, because I'm staying, she says. The clock can sing whatever song it likes. I'm staying. Aid to that ward. We move toward the glass. The bench light turns a small oval bright and exact. The vial waits in its foam cradle. It doesn't hurry. It doesn't stall. It waits. And the green digits write their patience seconds above it. The elevator complains to records, a slow metal valve that makes conversation wait. The hallway looks like a basement trying to dress as a library. Low ceilings, flicker in the fixtures, air that smells faintly of toner and dust. I kept this because no one asked for it back, he says, patting a thin courier envelope. Hands like someone who has counted bolts, square by square. Not noble, just habit. Exist. What is it exactly? A step. A map of maps, he says. The index that told us where everything lived. Mark. Paper fibrous, off-white, edges a little swollen. A rubber stamp smudges the top margin. Plant archive copy. We stop at a table scabbed with tape ghosts. He flips to a year that sits badly in his mouth. Warm year. River ran low. Evaporation pond became a rumor with a fence. Man. A calloused finger lands on overflow containment, bypass valve maintenance logs. A penciled checkmark trailing beside it. What's the code? Bad at so. He reads a string of letters and digits. I repeat. He makes me do it again. Procedure is muscle that doesn't forget. He turns another page. Near the spine, the staple has thinned to a rust shadow. Here's the one that bothered me, he says. Temporary repair, permanent deferred. A red arrow added, and badly erased, a ghost still visible. Next to it, E17. What is E17? Net. A culvert mouth you notice only from the water, he says. From the catwalk down, it behaved. These, back pocket, a loose insert meant to be binned after the index updated. Photocopy, blackout bars. Between them, a shard survives, to handling during transfer of liabilities. And faintly, Q4 of the warm year. I'll need to scan every page. That. 5 minutes, he says, checking the wall clock. Copy room closes at the quarter hour when the clerk runs the cart upstairs. Miss it. We wait another cycle. Aye. I'll make it in 3. Is it 2? He says. The machine likes to jam when it's bored. Social. The scanner hums awake. Old light takes offense at work. The hairline scratch throws a pale thread until I adjust. Pages bloom on the monitor. A temp folder catches each and names it like a witness. Legacy tags don't match current storage, but the crosswalk table in the margin does the translation. I read CH204, CH219, chemical handling, ER031, environmental remediation. 2, we can request. 1 needs a supervisor. It's footnote, smaller than the legal parts. Some CHER items migrated to municipal custody per interagency agreement. So not all of it hides behind your old badge. What? Most of it doesn't, he says. And what does belongs to whoever wears the badge today. I bag the scans. Name them like they'll have to testify. He starts to slide the red index home. Pauses. My pension, he says evenly. If I testify and someone calls it disloyal, the board can review benefits. Neff, is there a fund if they try? There is now, he says. I looked it up this morning. A cart squeals. The second hand jumps. Copy room in 1 minute, he says. Go, I tell him. I'll file the requests for CH-204 and CH-219 while you charm the clerk. No. Charm, he snorts. I'll apologize for existing in a building that keeps making noise. Hey. We split he toward the cart, to me toward the terminal carrying the same arrow, red and stubborn, still pointing at E17. He picks a conference room that isn't the biggest or the smallest. Blinds slice the afternoon into bands. The HVAC purrs like a throat clearing that never finishes. He rests a spoon on a saucer and decides against stirring. I'm making a request, he says, and I'm declaring a limit. You're making promises. I'm making sure the promises have teeth. There is no one. A one-page acquisition summary slides over asset purchase. Carve-outs. Schedules referenced but not attached. Mid-page. A highlight. Assumption of environmental liabilities with an exception clause the size of a thimble. This reads like some obligations might have stayed with you, I say. It reads like some obligations might have. He corrects. Depends on how a court reads known at time of sale. Were they known? No. I wasn't in the room, he says. The people who are now advise me not to ask questions in writing. His phone gives a discreet tremor. He turns it face down. 7 minutes, and I brief the chair. 20 in the board wants a confidence threshold for any release. Confidence threshold. No. If I open everything and it's a false alarm, I don't just lose a job, he says. I punch holes in retirements for people who never touched a sluice gate. No. And if you don't open, then I'm the man who hid numbers until the numbers drowned him. He tastes the smile and discards it. That's the limit. Jiu. From his folder, 3 emails from a legacy account. Printed so small, the letters look like pollen. Each mentions overflow events and points to attachments that aren't here. Dates line up with the warm year the engineer circled. Release the emails today, I say. Begin the spine. Emails I can do, he says. Attachments will take time. Legal will ask for more than we have. And I place the crosswalk codes. CH-204, CH-219, ER-031. So the index found you, he says. I can write the annex letter. That letter will be used against me later as proof I adopted legacy liabilities. It will also open a door before the upload. That's 2 true things, I say. Welcome to my week. Near his elbow, a draft resolution. Remove chief executive for cause for premature disclosures, causing material harm. He taps the paper once, then pushes it aside. What do you need from me? Accuracy, he says, and mercy that can survive facts. If the data says what we suspect, I need to be the one who shows it to the room. If I'm the villain here, let me read my own lines. Say, read something now. No mistake. I regret what we built to make money at speed, he says. It taught too many of us to live with edges we didn't walk to see. He signs an instruction to the annex. Unlock CH-204, CH-219, ER-031. Copies counsel and the clerk, Then he writes the sentence rooms don't like. Public trust requires prompt context, not convenient silence. You'll get pushback, I say. If the numbers cut our way, they'll call it luck. If they don't, they'll call it you. Bae. He stands, leaving the spoon untouched. I won't promise you a hero, he says at the door. I'll promise you a door. It's outside. The corridor carries voices about agendas and clocks. He checks neither. The paper in my hand has the weight of something that will either hold or tear, and we're out of minutes to decide which. The river wears the color of weak tea. Wind lifts tar from the pilings. Downstream, a buoy knocks the pier with a patient wooden syllable. We pull at the 3 waypoints, the lab tech says, tapping a laminated strip cured against weather. I mirror the dots on my map and open a fresh record. Coordinates, time, witness initials, photo slot. Caretaker said there was an outfall under that catwalk. I say, Capt? He answers. Old GPS puts E17 near that shadow. Earth moved. Coordinates don't lie. There's now. Metal chills through the glove. The sampler bites the surface. A brown leaf turns in the tube. Cap. Seal. Label. The field printer chews and spits a serial. The camera balks at low sky, then accepts the shot. Tide shifts in 2 minutes, he says, watching a rubberized timer. We want the second pull before the eddies smear it. Now. A tug's horn thuds the air. Swell rolls under the planks. We pull. Seal. Photograph. The printer eats a label. Relents after a firm tap. On shore, a man in a high-vis vest pretends this isn't the only place to stand. The tech pretends not to notice. I help him pretend. Third, he says. We lean past the rail. The sampler dips through a ribbon where light misbehaves. A thin rainbow feathers, breaks, gathers again. Could be traffic. Could be something that never completely left. I frame it with the GPS overlay burned into the corner and read the coordinates for the recorder. He opens the control column on the custody form. Different line. Different signature block. I countersign. My gloves smell of river and vinyl. Overhead, a rope creaks against a cleat, one slow hinge sound that makes the vest look up. Back to the lab in 10, the tech says. Photo set to your device or to the hearing room. Both. If someone loves angles later, I want 12 that disagree. Well. He pairs the control vial to the state token reservation only. No upload, and the screen gives a small green pulse that isn't safety but belongs in rooms that doubt. I log the time by hand. Software believes itself, and I believe handwriting. We leave the pier to the buoy's rhythm knock. Breath. Knock. Breath. Current faces us now. Somewhere behind walls, the armed clock continues without asking for consent. Wind shifts and brings up a note, like wet rope left in a truck bed. Gulls work the seam where fresh meets tide, dipping and scissoring as if they have their own coordinates. The high-vis vest man cups a hand to his ear, not to hear us, but to hear the river decide itself. The tech wipes a bead from the sampler neck with the back of a glove habit turning into ritual, then checks the cap with 2 clicks that barely make a sound. A boy on a rusted BMX slows at the rail, balances on 1 foot, and watches like he's learning a trade he can't name. I frame a shot through the ladder rungs. The GPS tag nests in the corner of the screen. Not pretty, just durable. When the swell slaps the pier, it sends a quiet thump up through the boards and into my knees. The notebook steadies against the rail and stops trying to act like a sail. The printer refuses a label. then eats it clean, and we both pretend it didn't hesitate. Across the channel, a barge pushes a brown wall forward at walking speed. Nothing dramatic happens. That's the point. We are catching a day that looks like every day, so that later nobody can edit how it smelled. A cormorant surfaces where the eddy fattens, regards us with the indifference reserved for weather and officials, then slides under as if through a trapdoor. The tech tightens the cooler straps and says the word tight like a promise he intends to keep even if no one hears it. We log one more angle of the Outfall shadow, not because it will convince a skeptic, but because later, when memory edits, the shadow will not. Upstairs, the copy room sulks while a scanner warms. The page we need stands on the monitor, right margin browned by a decade of filing. Left margin, the engineer says on speaker. Temporary repair, permanent deferred. Someone tried to erase the red arrow and failed. The CEO arrives without entourage. Those the box codes. There's 2 chemical handling. 1. Environmental remediation. I say, CH204, CH219, ER031, 2 by request. ER031 wants a supervisor. No. Footnote. Smaller than caution. Some CHER items migrated to municipal custody per interagency agreement. If the shelf you want isn't in your house, you knock on City Hall's door. Boilerplate hides the hinge. Up close, the paragraph refuses to disappear. Post-transfer corrective action obligations survive where harm is continuing or reasonably likely. It doesn't care about faces. So the duty floats after the sale. I say, so we pay for repair instead of rehearsing blame. He answers. I drag a legacy email beside a maintenance number. Dates lean together like magnets. Overflow event. Warm. Low water year. Near the E series. What's the cost? I ask. The same people who begged for decisiveness will call this naive. The CEO says, if the stock trembles, retirees get their mornings wrecked. I'll be accused of adopting sins that predate me and of not looking hard enough when it was my job to look. No, we can. Action, not sentiment. No. Paper, not email, he says, pulling a legal pad. Emails leak faster than ink dries. Div. He writes narrow and legible lines for strangers who will quote him. Propose consent decree with independent monitor. Commit funds proportional to continuing harm. Request municipal cooperation for ER03, 1 access. Initiate public dashboard with quarterly reporting. Stipulated penalties to a restricted remediation fund. He adds, monitor from vetted state panel. The engineer clears his throat. If you need me to say the arrow was there, I'll say it. They can review benefits. They can't claw back what I already ate. And I photograph the clause with a date stamp and the room number on a sticky note and frame. Redundancy is respect for later. The CEO signs an instruction to the records annex for CH204, CH219, ER031. Counsel and the clerk copied by name because procedures remember names. They'll say this proves I adopted liabilities, he says, capping the pen. They'll say you stalled if you don't. I answer. Then we choose the door that opens. He writes the line that will outlive this room. Public trust requires prompt context, not convenient silence. The scanner beeps once. The room feels larger or intent lets air in. Chair in 5, he says, checking a watch that isn't decorative. Copy room in 1, I say, scooping the prints. Carry the claws like a spine. We leave the screen glowing. The clause stays where it is, indifferent to our feet, ready to be read by whoever needs permission to stop rehearsing yesterday and start paying for tomorrow. The clinic's borrowed workroom smells like coffee that forgot to be urgent. Folding tables make a horseshoe around a portable projector. Council keeps the room small on purpose, posters down, windows half-latched, so paper feels heavier than light. This is the box we can stand in without being crushed, she says, uncapping a pen. Left is obligations. Right is oversight. Bottom is money. Top is time. What? The mother sets both palms on the table. And where does the river go? Mass. Through the middle, Council says, clicking to Consent Decree Draft V1, Independent Monitor Vetted Panel, Quarterly Public Reporting, Stipulated Penalties to Restricted Fund. Who chooses the monitor? I ask. State's Vetted Panel. Council answers. We propose a shortlist. Town comments. The chair signs. Not a mascot. A calendar with teeth. The mother flips index cards written in grocery list capitals. I'll say it plain. We are not shopping for a friend. We are hiring a calendar. Now. Council slides over community writer draft posts the sampling calendar. Publish thresholds. Announce fixes before celebrations. Office hours at the community lab. Hotline from missed milestones routed to the monitor. Add raw tables plus plain English summaries on the dashboard. I say. She writes it and underlines plain English. A crude mock dashboard appears. Tiles 6, 12, 24. Under 6, lease temporary lab. Bench delivery scheduled. Monitor shortlist posted for comment. Publish sampling calendar. Under 12, source control started. First dashboard live. Riverbank procurement open. Under 24, community screenings begin. Second dashboard. Penalties disclosed if any accrue. Where do penalties go if they bite? The mother asks. Restricted remediation fund. Council says. They fix the river or sit there as an embarrassment. Bien. A volunteer rolls in a dented cart with a laser printer. Bored in less than 20. I say, we need tools, not slogans. Well, rolls. Council says, mother carries rider and timeline. Avoids blame unless forced. Says work 4 times. CEO speaks to duty. Engineer confirms the index. You tie CH204, CH219, ER03, 1 to the dashboard, so doors look open. If numbers stall, the mother asks. Council sketches a calendar bar that reddens at the right edge. Then the penalty meter starts. The printer wakes. Pages land with a tidy thwop. On the writer's bottom line, she writes, Public trust requires prompt context, not convenient silence. Who opens? The mother asks. You, Council says. Then, the CEO. Then, the engineer, if the room argues with the arrow. And a children's choir filters through the wall vowels, rehearsing patience. The projector clock blinks 0:14. The mother slips the rider and the timeline into a clear folder and practices lifting it with their turning it into a shield. Board in 10, I say. Make it 9, she answers. I want to own the next sentence. Is mon. We step into the corridor. The song keeps its round. We don't wait to see if it ends. Council dots the lower right corner of the mock with a pen, a tiny constellation to mark what belongs to the monitor instead of to anyone's pride. She circles the word work until the ink almost shows through. The circle looks like a little wheel. The mother practices a line under her breathwork instead of hope, and the projector's fan answers with its small dry wind. I tilt the screen 2 degrees so the glare falls off the timeline. The tiles read clearer and look less like promises and more like schedule. Someone sets a paper cup by the printer as a tip jar for staples. It fills with bent ones in under a minute. I swap a dead marker for a fresh one, and the cap pops like a small relief valve. Counsel rubs a smudge off the projector lens with the hem of her sleeve, and leaves the hem worse for it. The mother practices setting the folder down without letting it become a shield. The trick is in the wrists. The boardroom smells of lemon oil and long arguments. The agenda sits on the wall like a list that has waited for this day. Before item 6, the chair says, the CEO requests a procedural insertion. 2 minutes. And he brings paper, not slides. We have a path consistent with the transparency bylaw. Release legacy correspondence today. Petition the records annex for CH204, CH219, ER031. Pair disclosures with a consent decree, independent monitor, and public dashboard. What? A director with rimless glasses lifts 2 fingers. Shareholder letter 79 signatories warns disclosure without full context could depress value and jeopardize pensions. Context is prepared. The CEO says, we show the decree frame and the timeline before numbers land. We do not stall the upload. Nay. Intentions are not filings, she replies. Counsel projects the bylaw paragraph. Interim disclosures allowed when public trust is at stake, provided the chair certifies good faith and a contemporaneous remedial pathway is shown. Certification rests with me, the chair says. Convince me good faith works. The retired engineer steps forward. I maintained E-Series controls 15 years. We deferred a permanent repair. The index shows it. I didn't push hard enough. He does not perform a flourish with the paper. The exhibit has been logged. The packet has room for shame without theater. I slide the community rider and the timeline card across. Dashboard shows 6, 12, 24. Numbers sit next to actions. Penalties, if they bite, feed a restricted remediation fund. Pensions, the rimless director asks. Silence is a market event too, the chair says. The clerk places a small red dot by the on-screen clock. It behaves like a fuse. Proceed to packet, the chair says. We move papers, annex petitions for CH204, CH219, ER031. Initials, stamp. Field photos of E17 slide into the record. The photocopy with the red ghost arrow is noted as received earlier. The portal timer shows 4:59 and refuses comfort. We will not stall the state's process, the chair says for the transcript. Pack it to the desk, she adds. Dashboard URL marked pending invisible. See? The URL sits on the auxiliary screen as pending a promise without color. The rider and the timeline card sleep under glass. The red dot holds. The progress bar breathes once and waits. 4:58. Wood chairs settle around us. A reporter caps a pen and uncaps it again. Someone in the gallery exhales through their teeth and calls it patience. We let the clock do the talking. Our job is to keep the nouns in the same frame until it does. Somewhere in the ducts, a damper shifts, and the red dot trembles the smallest degree and holds. They catch her on the steps. 3 neighbors in coats the color of late leaves. A moving truck idles at the curb and ticks in the cold. A nylon strap clacks a ratchet beat as someone cinches a dresser inside. Do you have a second? The woman from the corner duplex asks. She keeps her voice low, as if any louder would be an accusation. They're saying today's numbers could shave another 7% off the street. And that was... The street isn't a chart, the mother says. It's where kids learn to ride. The bank doesn't ride bikes. The man in the knit cap answers. My renewal's in 3 weeks. If comps dip, I'll remember this afternoon for 30 years. Things. A glossy flyer skitters across the steps. The staged kitchen on the front is all white bowls and fruit that never bruises. The wind flips it to the fine print on the back. Disclosure addendum required for properties within the floodplain, Legacy Industrial Corridor, when flagged by State Portal. The duplex woman points. That's my block, she says. It's yours too. If the river's sick, we're already paying, the mother says. We're just not counting it where the bank can see. Look, I'm not against you, the man says. But if this goes loud without a cushion, people like us get sold to from under our feet. We pushed a housing annex into the decree. I say, it's tied to documented devaluation in defined blocks. Not to anybody's favorite. Income-banded rent bridge. Relocation aid only if staying becomes impossible. Priority for longest tenured. Where is it beside your mouth? The woman asks. On a city memo, I tell her, the municipal building is half a block away. We walk. The truck engine cuts off behind us. The ratchet clicks once more, as if finishing a thought. Inside the foyer, a corkboard under glass holds notices with pushpins that have been used too often. A fresh city administrator's memo preliminary framework housing aid annex sits in the top left. Bullet points read like a procedure and not a promise. Income banded assistance. Priority for longest tenured. Rent bridge trigger on documented devaluation. Relocation assistance only if staying is untenable. Program sunsets in 12 months unless renewed. At the bottom, pending subject to council vote if state portal flags corridor. Dated today. The duplex woman raises her phone and takes a photo, then a second one with the date stamp caught in the corner. She forwards it to the tenant chat and types 3 words I can read upside down, not just talk. Dots appear under it like small lights coming on down a street. Okay, the man says, rubbing his jaw as if he could smooth the math. But if lenders see that addendum, they'll price us like we're already underwater. They'll price us like we are, the mother says. The annex is for the first fall, not for always. It buys time to work instead of panic. He studies her. Work instead of hope, he says, as if he's testing whether the phrase holds weight in his mouth. The mother nods. I'll carry that to the table, she says. You can stand behind me if you want your name spoken without being spoken for. A city employee in a sweater vest slides past with a stack of envelopes and a clip-on badge. Hearing room A is posted. He says to no one in particular. Packet desk will accept materials on the quarter. Yeah. We step back onto the sidewalk, where the truck has opened its side door. The driver leans on the wheel and watches the sky like it owes him news. The duplex woman tucks her phone away. Do you have a line I can use? She asks the mother. That doesn't make me sound like I'm selling my street. Try this, the mother says. We are not asking for a discount. We are asking for a bridge. No. The man in the knit cap blows into his hands. Bridge, I can say. He concedes. It sounds like something that has to be built. Not. At the corner, the light stays red long enough for everyone to look at each other. The mother lifts the clear folder under her arm just enough to show the timeline card and the rider. These are tools, she says. They are not pretty. And they don't have to be. The woman says. They have to be strong. This is the... We cross with the signal. Behind us, the strap in the truck ratchets again. Inside, something heavy finally sits where it belongs. The woman tucks hair behind one ear and leaves a fingerprint of cold on her phone glass. Somewhere, a baseboard heater snaps on and off. The kind of sound you don't notice until the month a renewal comes due. A dog barks twice from a balcony, then decides to listen instead of defend. A delivery bike ghosts past with a yellow flag snapping at its tail, the kind that says both hurry and careful. The knit cat man watches it go and pinches the brim, as if to keep a thought from blowing away. Hearing Room A borrows its authority from fluorescents and microphones. Wood chairs exhale as people settle. On the dais, the clerk tests a gooseneck mic with a syllable that starts and stops in the same breath. The lab tech takes the witness seat with a binder that knows where it's going. Chain of custody for sample A, he says. Signatures line up by time. Control sample B, he adds. Separate seals recorded. My recorder ticks, not like a clock, but like a list that refuses to be out of order. Upload armed, the clerk announces. 2 sample locations populate on the state portal, E17 vicinity and community intake. Each carries a confidence interval and a token ID that matches the labels the tech read aloud. Any objections to proceeding? The chair asks. Only to note that context will be provided, a lawyer says flatly. No objection to the act. Proceed, the chair says. The progress bar advances with the indifference of good software. 459 drops into 458 in the lower corner. A long breath moves through the rows, one animal, low and restless. Counsel places the community rider on the side table. The mother lays the timeline card beside it, with the quiet triumph of a carpenter checking level. We use the minutes. The dashboard mock goes up on the auxiliary screen with the words, "Pending will display raw tables and plain English summaries." The clerk nods. Not to us, but to the idea that public information should exist where the public sits. The bar completes. The portal flashes a soft green. The clerk reads exactly what the screen gives her. Community intake. Nitrate N, 2.3 parts per million. E17 vicinity. Chlorinated solvents trace above state action level for historic discharge review. Preliminary. Subject to confirmatory protocols. Criteria met for immediate notice to agencies. No one gasps. The sound that follows is paper becoming part of the record. A director starts to speak and doesn't. The engineer, standing now, places a photocopy on the table. Temporary repair, permanent deferred, with the red ghost arrow still pointing to the year that went warm too soon. Good faith certification, the chair says to the clerk. Bylaw section, allows interim disclosure when public trust is at stake. Cite that the company has presented a contemporaneous remedial pathway consent decree frame, independent monitor path, dashboard together with annex petitions for CH204, CH219, ER031. Mel. The clerk types with both hands and no show. In the gallery, someone whispers, "There it is." The way sailors talk about a lighthouse they only half expected to find. The rimless director clears her throat. "Pensions," she says. "If markets punish us for speed, I use..." Silence punishes with a delay. The chair replies, "We are done with delay." She signs the certification. The last line reads, "Public trust requires prompt context, not convenient silence." Packet desk, the clerk says. Materials received rider. Timeline. Dashboard mock. Annex petitions timestamped. Yes. The CEO stands without inflating. We will fund what survives transfer and what decency requires. he says. Not for applause. We accept the independent monitor and the penalty meter that follows work, not speeches. 1. Visibility, I say, and the clerk toggles the dashboard URL from pending to open with a code that looks like it belongs on streetlight poles. The auxiliary screen shows tile 6, 12, 24 waiting for raw tables. The mother's card appears in the lower right like a promise written on something cheap enough to be real. A director at the far end finally finds his voice. If confirmatory protocols disagree with preliminary numbers, he says, how do we unring this bell? No. We don't, counsel says. We log the correction and show our work in public. That's what the dashboard is for. I do. The chair raises her gavel and rests it again without striking. The public notice has been generated. The agencies have been alerted. The annex petitions are logged. The certification is signed. No? She looks at the engineer. Your index page is accepted into the record. What the vey? He nods. His hand stays on the paper as if the copy itself could walk away. In the row behind him, the mother keeps the clear folder against her ribs, not armor. Not banner, just the place where plans live while people are still seated. The room relaxes by degrees and refuses to relax entirely. The bar on the portal resets to a thinner line labeled Confirmatory Protocols. We won't be here for that one. The chair gestures to the auxiliary screen. Leave the dashboard URL up, she says. Let the public see the address. The clerk writes it on a white card and tapes it to the edge of the table where people pick up agendas and hard candies without deciding to. The pen squeaks. It sounds like a bridge being tested by a single step. Next item, the chair says. Announce the good faith certification. Then proceed to the vote on adding extraordinary disclosure. Here, no one asks for a recess. In the hallway outside, the air conditioner stutters and catches. Inside, the floor finds its level. The engineer lifts his hand off the paper. The mother exhales a breath she doesn't owe to anyone. Pack it to the desk. The chair repeats for the minutes. Dashboard open. No. That's the line the room keeps. The side room is colder by a degree that feels like a rule. A small recorder blinks. A pen taps once to prove it has ink. Counsel lays out a stapled stack, labeled Consent Decree Version 2, and squares the corners with her thumbs. Teeth first, the chair says. Independent monitor from the state's vetted panel, counsel answers, pointing with the pen cap. Quarterly public reporting to a dashboard that carries both raw tables and plain English summaries. Stipulated penalties per day of non-performance. Paid into a restricted remediation fund tracked on the dashboard. They're not in part. The CEO nods at each line like someone confirming bolts on a bridge. Housing annex, he asks. Tied to documented devaluation within defined blocks, counsel says. Income banded rent bridge. Relocation only if staying becomes untenable. Priority to longest tenured. 12-month sunset with review. Inf. The mother rests a clear folder on the table. Inside, the timeline card sits on top. 6, 12, 24. Say the verbs. She requests. 6 weeks. Counsel recites. Counting with the pen. Lease. Reassign. Post. Publish. 12. She adds. Start. Go live. Procure. My code. 24 screen. Report. Disclose. The CEO slides forward a single page in his own block hand. Company acknowledges duties that continue where harm continues. Without prejudice to claims between past and present owners. He underlines without prejudice once. That sentence will be misunderstood, the chair says. It will also be true, he replies. I invite the motion that follows. And a mock. The community lab charter 1 page slides into the packet. Open hours posted. Volunteer coverage ensured. Sample calendar public. Hotline to the monitor for missed milestones. The mother reads each line aloud as if feeding air to a pilot light. Put the number in the window, she says. People call when they smell the river in the sink. Not. Speaking order? The chair asks. Mother opens. Counsel says. CEO follows with the duty sentence and monitor acceptance. Engineer confirms the E-Series deferral in the index. I'll anchor the dashboard and annex mechanics if questions turn technical. SASC. We do not sign anything the room has already signed. The good faith certification belongs to the hearing, not to this table. The recorder's red light keeps time anyway. We keep the dashboard URL on the screen when we return, I say. Let people take it home like an address, not a rumor. Hey, do that, the chair says. Then we go back to air. No. A keycard chirps. The murmur of the larger room swells. The mother tucks the rider and card into the clear folder, the way mechanics tuck the right wrench. The CEO squares his shoulders as if to fit under a weight he chose on purpose. Counsel aligns the packet, checks the stapler, presses. We step into the corridor, where the carpet carries the bruised silence of many careful afternoons. The recorder blinks red. No one turns it off. The stapler misfires once and swallows a tooth. Counsel shakes the cartridge out over her palm and laughs without sound. She lines the spine again and presses. This time the teeth find paper and stay. The chair rests 2 fingers on the packet like a mechanic feeling idle through a fender. The room carries the cold of a library where rules were born. The mother tests the folder hinge as if it were a joint set after a break. It doesn't click. It just holds. We speak in verbs because nouns can be argued into furniture. Lease, reassign, post, publish, start, live, procure, screen, report, disclose. Counsel reads each, while her pen keeps the beat against the margin. The recorder catches the taps and will make them look intentional. Someone outside the door rolls a trash bin past at exactly the wrong moment, and the sound becomes part of the record too. The CEO underlines the word duty, and then underlines the white space after it, which is where most duties fail. He does not say sorry. He keeps saying we will. The engineer folds his hands over the index copy he didn't bring in because he didn't need to. The ghost arrow seems to live in his knuckles. He looks at the corner of the ceiling where old paint decides to peel when rooms get serious. The mother rehearses her opening line once more without voice. I read lips, neighbors, not numbers. On the charter's bottom margin, I write phonetic cues for the hotline, digits too short, 3 quick so a volunteer can read them aloud without looking afraid. The chair pockets a small tin of mints that clicks like a metronome when she moves. We are not brave in here. We are busy. And busy is the only thing I've ever seen hold a river to its word. The chair tests the mint tin once and leaves it shut. The click would sound like punctuation, and we are out of punctuation. Counsel writes a time in the corner of her copy and draws a square around it. The square turns into a small calendar without numbers. I note the way the carpet joins the threshold with a metal strip that will snag someone's shoe if facilities doesn't come tonight. I write facilities in my pad and underline it twice. The CEO folds his note back into his pocket as if returning a tool to a drawer you plan to open again. The mother looks at the rider and then at the door, and then back at the rider, as if measuring the distance between paper and air. None of us say courage. We say the next verb. Chairs scrape as people stand, sit, and decide to stand again. The projector hums back to life. The cursor lands on item 6A like a small boat touching a dock. The motion, the chair says. Adopt the consent decree as negotiated. Certify good faith basis. Direct immediate petition for CH-204, CH-219, ER-031. Authorize a community lab under municipal oversight. Clarify that lawsuits may continue where appropriate. Tonight we begin remedies. It's dozen tenths. Roll call, the clerk says, and names fall into the minutes one by one. 2 dissents arrive together like a matched set, both citing fear that early disclosure rattles pensions and markets. Reasons are stated. The motion carries. The screen splits. Left panel summarizes decree teeth monitor from vetted panel. Quarterly dashboard. Penalties to restricted fund. Right panel shows a big plain URL the public can remember. Phones lift. Someone in the back reads the letters aloud to a parent who doesn't hear well in rooms like this. This is not a settlement disguised as a headline, a director says into the mic. It is a schedule. Nice. And a monitor with teeth, the engineer adds, quietly enough that the recorder still hears him. Reporters try for color. Officials answer with nouns, tiles, dates, benches, bank stabilization, screens. The clerk marks agencies notified from the state portal's auto notice. On the auxiliary screen, a thin line appears under confirmatory protocols and, beside it, 3 small gray anchors labeled Next Public Data Drops. No one pretends anchors are promises. They are scaffolds. Public comment will open after item 7, the chair says. Meanwhile, the packet desk provides copies of the decree summary, the rider, and the timeline card. The dashboard will reflect progress in the same order you are hearing. And dull. People form a gentle line in front of a sign-up sheet that didn't need advertising. Someone writes trucks next to their name. Someone else writes Childcare Thursdays. A young staffer tapes a white card with the URL in thick marker. The squeak is small and municipal. A teenager drops a folded paper that says Water Test Volunteers in tidy print. The projector operator dims the left screen for a breath and brings it back. The tiles blink to acknowledge their birth. Nothing flashy. 6, 12, 24 hold their places like stones and wait to earn their first stripe. In the back, a man who wore a high-visibility vest at the river earlier leans in the doorway without pretending to be elsewhere. He watches the URL as if it were a tide table. I make a note and let him be a person instead of a symbol. The gavel taps once. Papers slide into folders. The sound is not applause. It is the start of a shift change. People move toward the public desk where the white card lives. Pens lift. Someone counts outlets in the community lab's temporary space and says, "We'll need a new strip." As weird. The mother gathers the clear folder, now lighter by copies shared and heavier by names volunteered. The fluorescence softened by half a lumen, as if the building, too, were letting go of a breath. We go to work. A child leans over the public desk and counts the tiles out loud, 6, 12, 24, getting the order wrong and pleased anyway. A woman in scrubs writes her name and draws a box around Thursdays, as if a square could hold a promise steady. Someone in a safety vest sets a coil of extension cord by the wall and says, to no one in particular, "We'll need 2 more outlets by the sink." Ike. The clerk straightens the white card with the URL, even though it was straight. The marker smell is oddly reassuring. Outside the glass, rain starts small and organized. Inside, the room takes its shape from people standing where they said they would. A boy in a school hoodie practices the gavel tap on his knee and stops when the real gavel answers. A man with paint under his nails asks if the lab needs sawhorses. The clerk says yes before remembering to ask for a name. Two retirees compare notes on bus schedules to the temporary lab and end up swapping phone numbers in pencil. Someone leaves a casserole pan on the public desk with a note that says oven 375. 10 minutes. Take what you need. The projector fan hiccups and then steadies. The tiles on the screen hold still as if they know they're being watched. No one takes a victory photo. People take the URL. A council regular in a cardigan tells a new volunteer which hallway leads to the good water fountain and which one to the loud one. Two teenagers compare stickers on their laptops and end up pasting the URL on a case that already knows a few causes. The security guard relaxes his shoulders a degree and checks the door not because he is worried, but because that is what good guards do when a room exhales.